the hell is this guy?
I'm gonna need Mr. Drake's property back.
Oh, what are you doing?
I'm putting my hands up.
Now, let's bite all the heads off and pile them up in the corner.
Why would we do that? We're not finished.
Yes, you are, Mr. Brock.
Is that a threat?
Have a nice life.
Welcome, everyone. This is episode 49 of the Comics in Motion podcast. I am back. It is Chris Phelps, and my good friend and co-host is Mr. Dave Horrocks.
Hi, Chris, and hi, guys. Welcome to the Comics in Motion podcast. What we like to do here is we like to review media like movies, TV shows, and games that are based on comic books. Myself, I'll be looking at the media from the perspective of a long-time comic book fan, and my co-host, Chris, will be reviewing mainly from that media perspective, and we'll walk down the middle somewhere of our given choice of the week and give our thoughts on it. What we also like to do is we also like to spoil the hell out of everything we review. So if you haven't watched our choice of the week, we'd advise you to proceed with caution. And what we also love is when you can head over to Apple Podcasts or your podcast catcher of choice and drop us a 5-star review. This really helps us to grow the show and helps us get out to other listeners that are out there. So Chris, first of all, welcome back.
Yep.
And we've actually got a couple of Apple Podcast reviews to read out as well.
Okay, good stuff, Dave.
Now, I don't know if you've had a chance to have a look.
I have, yes. Yes. Would you like me to go first, or do you have a preference?
I'm going to go ahead and go first, I think. So the last two, I think I've kind of jokingly said these are probably from a lady. And then proceeded to put a real gruff voice on this for a big knuckle dragon bloke. But I am going to read out this one, I think, in a particular style. But what's in my head is probably not what's going to come out of the mouth. But let's see. This one's entitled, Right Up My Alley. If you like comic book movies, this part is a must. Great hosting and an instant subscribe button hit.
I don't know whether to be excited or to get
or aroused.
You can get a video from Blockbuster.
And that is from Talk Filmy to Me.
It was. I'm not sure whether it was female or male, Dave, but I actually enjoyed it. So
I was actually going for Jessica Rabbit.
Oh, right. Well, like Jessica Jones. Very good, Dave. Very good. Now, my review is actually quite coincidence that it was actually put up on my birthday, the 23rd of November. So it's only right that I should do this one. And this one's entitled Already Recommending This. And again, Dave, we have had a voicemail. Just one sec. To comic book fans, I know. Well done on a great podcast. Timbers, I secretly recorded my boyfriend. And that's from Timbers227. Thank you very much for that.
I think equally arousing, quite honestly.
Well, you're easily pleased, Dave. But thanks for the reviews, because I know we have a bit of fun reading about, and I hope you guys get across that we're not thingy. It's just a joke. I think it's really funny. I love, and I do believe, Dave, your other podcast, The Grassroots, has gone down the same route with your reviews.
We have. A good idea is a good idea worth stealing, and so I think I read one out, to give my co-host Ben, a bit of a taster, and then last week he kind of upped me, so he's not one for the accents, but he put on a bit of a Scottish accent and was really rolling the tongues.
Really good, because I'll tell you why. When I was listening to it, I was doing so, I was cooking in the kitchen, I had it on, and I wasn't sure who was doing the review, and then I thought, that's definitely not Dave, it's too good. So it made me stop what I was doing when I was listening, but very good. Ben did really well there, Dave, really well.
He did. So, Chris, do you want to say a few words from our sponsor?
Yeah, again, today's episode is sponsored by Sudio, headphones specialists that we are both actually wearing today and both use all the time. And they've got a special offer on with it coming up to Christmas. So If you get over to Sudio's website at www.sudio.com, with every purchase, you do get a free Christmas gift box, which consists of free delivery and a free wireless TO earphones. And that's with every purchase. And on top of that, it wasn't good enough, if you use the code Comics in Motion Podcast, you'll get 15% off. And that's open to all our listeners and followers and even reviewers. So thank you, guys. So get over there today and sudio.com.
Okay, so Chris, we're recording right after the day that new Captain Marvel trailer dropped. So have you had a chance to see it?
Yeah, I was up early yesterday because jet lag is absolutely killing me. And I saw it pretty much as it was released over in America, which was like mid-morning. Yeah, I'm quite interested, to be honest, Dave. I'm quite interested where they go. I do know the origins of the character as such, but not as much as what they're going to go into depth with this, which I'm quite interested in. And I think as well, I'm more interested to see where it ties in because of the closing scene of the Avengers, Infinity War, and how it all ties in and how she's relevant to the story in the Avengers 4. So and also they've done the old de-aging thing on Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury. So that's which is good. And I also, Dave, so let's go for a tangent, but in relation to this, I watched Infinity War again while I was away.
All right.
I have a theory. Now, obviously, you know the comic background, but when we're watching that film, spoiler alert, if you've not seen it, Thanos clicks his fingers and basically half the population gets decimated, doesn't it? Like a cleansing sort of genocide thing, whatever. I think the switch, Dave, is done before Gamora gets killed. I'm watching it again, trying to find the cues and that, because I watched it on the plane. And I watched it, and I think there's something up with when he throws Gamora off the side of the cliff, Thanos, to get the
Soul Stone.
Soul Stone. I genuinely do, and that's just as Doctor Strange has said. I've looked so many million times, and there's only one time where we win, sort of thing, and that happens just before he does that. And I'm wondering whether that's where the switch is in the film. And so it's played out like Thanos has killed everybody, but it's a double reality. And then I read another theory that Bruce Banner is actually Loki and not the Hulk, and that's why he won't change. So I'll leave that one, Dave. That's a big fan theory, that.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
No, the Russo brothers said he's dead, but obviously they're going to say that. But that's recently, and they did a Q&A, didn't they, while they watched the film again. That was last week. But there's a couple of little things for you to digest there, Dave.
Yeah, I think Loki will come back, and there's a series, isn't there, going to be on the new Disney streaming service? So that's a bit of a spoiler, isn't it? If we think he's dead, well, how is he getting his own series then? But yeah, I think I thought the one outcome was to do with Doctor Strange handing over the time gem. Yeah, but okay. I mean, who knows? But I can't wait. But I do think, getting it back to Captain Marvel, I think it's going to be relatively self-contained, I think it will lead into Avengers 4 or Infinity War 2 as much as, say, Ant-Man and Wasp did. Yeah. So there's going to be a little bit at the end. And what it looks like from the trailers is it's going to be a lot about, Captain Marvel's origin and, how she's sort of reborn, recreated, if you like, by this Kree empire. And then they're at war with the Skrulls, who are like shape-shifting aliens. So I think the story is just going to focus on that. It does. I'm glad. It looks like Nick Fury is going to be in there quite a lot from the trailer. So yeah, it looks great. But I've got a feeling it's going to be fairly standalone.
No, I agree. I think it will, because obviously it's set in the 90s as well, isn't it? So set 20 years ago. Anyway, well, more than that, it depends if it's the early 90s, maybe 30 years. So depending when it is, you are correct. I just think there's going to be some sort of time thing or something. That'll be, like you say, it may just be the cutscene at the end, but it'll all tie in. And then it does tie in with the fact that this week we're going to get a Spider-Man trailer, which is supposed to be today. And then the Avengers trailer is supposed to be tomorrow. And I've read that it's now been pushed back to Friday. So there's going to be a teaser for the Avengers. That
Right.
everywhere on our timeline on Twitter has said, like, some are saying it's been pushed back because of George Bush's funeral, because obviously the whole country's going to be on that, and they don't think it's appropriate to release that.
Yeah.
They usually release it around the sports, like the Captain Marvel was Monday Night Football in America, which is their biggest viewing time midweek, so that's why it was released. But they had a full week of this. But I suppose, though, the Spider-Man one is a bit weird to release some sort of trailer or teaser, because he's been clipped, and he's been decimated. So surely you would do the Avengers first, and then I would have left Spider-Man. I don't get that. It's sort of showing your hand already. We know he survives because they're filming it, but you like a bit of a mystique to it, don't you?
Yeah, and the general, how much of the general public really know that they're filming that second movie? Try and maintain some kind of,
that's what I mean, yeah,
mystique around it. So I don't know. It does seem a little bit silly, doesn't it?
Yeah. Now, Dave, it's been a sad day, and I've worn my armband for nearly 3 days now. Daredevil.
I can't believe it. Well, I can believe it, but I was still hopeful that there was going to be a booking of the trend, where we'd seen Iron Fist be cancelled, Luke Cage, but then surely the best of the lot was Daredevil. And it wasn't as close, was it? They left it for a bit. Daredevil season 3's been up there now. We obviously rated it quite highly. We loved it. Thought it was the best one yet. Or a lot of the reviews, the things that I've heard just talking to people, I think everyone loves it. But it seems for whatever reason, it's just not worked out.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, it all points to the Disney streaming thing, doesn't it? Everyone said that. And like Vincent D'Onofrio, who was followed on Twitter, followed him since the first series, and he's just retweeting all sorts about the actors, people, write-ups about Daredevil, where there's been a lot of press actually questioning why they're doing this. They said there's no way you would get, especially the viewing figures, Dave. The viewing figures were phenomenal for Daredevil. So it's got a point towards Disney more than anything. I think that they're going to take it under the wings one way or the other. They've got to.
Possibly. I hope they carry it on. It does seem to be that it was Netflix's decision, though.
Yeah. This is a bit bizarre, because you've got the Punisher there, Jessica Jones. It's the Punisher, and it's the next one.
Yeah.
And I know John Berthel, who plays the Punisher, he said he's already got one eye open, that he's going to be, it's going to be closed down already. So that'll be a shame, because I think the second season was going to build a lot of momentum for the Punisher, because it was a bit slow in the middle, wasn't it? But it was a good series, a good season.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting anyway.
Yep. So I think, if it does go over to Disney, even if they brought across like Charlie Cox, Vincent D'Onofrio and co, it's not going to really fit in with the whole Disney concept, is it? So no. I quite liked the fact that you had this Netflix, this darker, more adult kind of corner of the Marvel universe. I like that, and that. I don't know, it is what it is, isn't it? We've still got 3 great seasons. I know people generally think season 2 dipped a bit. Personally, I think season 2 was still great. I love the Punisher and the interaction with Daredevil, their competing philosophies, about what to do with criminals and whatever. Love their back and forth. But it is what it is. So we'll see what comes next for. Ultimately, Daredevil's one of my favorite characters. So I want to make sure he's in good hands.
Oh, good stuff, Dave. Good stuff. Any other movies you've watched that are not comic book basis last week, Dave?
So I actually took the kids to see Wreck-It Ralph.
Oh,
and you know what? It's brilliant.
Good work.
Well, actually, I say it's brilliant. Actually, probably not quite as good as the first one, I don't think. And it's an interesting one because it's all the retro kind of 80s arcade games that it's all based on. So, the kids get something out of it as an animated movie, but, the parents get quite a lot as well. And I enjoyed it. Love going to the cinema anyway. But yeah, probably wasn't quite as good as the first one. And I think the way it ended, it wasn't super happy ending. It was a little bit muted. But definitely recommend that one to go and see that if you got young kids. How about yourself, Chris?
Well, be due to me having nearly 10 days of jet lag, we've not really watched a lot of films. This week, though, we've been having the Limitless card. We're going to see Creed 2, the Rocky follow-up, or Creed, the second one. We want to see that Bradley Cooper one with Lady Gaga. And he's the Fantastic Beast, which I believe's very mixed reviews. But not to give my hand away, I don't necessarily take to the reviewer scores now. I'd rather go and watch it myself, which is something that you do, to be fair. I'm more like with computer games as a big gamer. I'll check the reviews out first, and sometimes it stopped me buying games I fancied. And then when I've actually played them, I thought, what are they going on about? So I think you just got to make your own mind up. So I'm a big Harry Potter fan. Everything, so we're going to go and see them as well. So we have a busy maybe next 7 days at the cinema every other day, hopefully.
Very good, very good. And speaking of films that are derided by critics but seemingly loved by people who go and see it, do you want to give away what our review is today?
Yeah, we're going to review Venom with Tom Hardy, so which I'm really looking forward to getting into, to be honest, Dave. Now, Dave, have you got any comic book background to start us off?
I have. Now, it's a little bit convoluted, this one, about where does Venom actually start. So Venom, you could say, made his first cameo appearance back in Amazing Spider-Man 299, with his full appearance actually coming in issue 300. Now, this was in 1988, and this was when basically the symbiote bonded with Eddie Brock. Before that, though, we had the black-suited Spider-Man. Now, the original idea for the black suit came from a Marvel reader, a guy called Randy Schuler, who basically sent in a letter back in 1982 and said, we should give Spider-Man a black suit. And Marvel agreed to pay him a whole $220 for it. And basically, we first saw the black-suited Spider-Man come into Amazing Spider-Man 252 in 1984, and that was depicted as having this kind of living alien costume. But you didn't really see how he got it. And that was because the origin of how he got it came in a crossover event called Secret Wars. So, first appearance, May 1984. How he got the suit appeared in December 1984 in this Secret Wars number 8. And this Secret Wars miniseries, I think of it with a lot of fondness. Basically, a whole bunch of heroes and a whole bunch of villains were pitted against each other by this being called the Beyonder on this place called Battle World. And the whole idea was basically conceived to market superhero toys. That was the original thing. How can we do this? How can we sell a bunch of toys? But in the story, Spider-Man's suit gets torn in part of a battle, and Hulk and Thor send him off into a room and say, if you imagine what your new suit is going to be, this machine will make a new suit for you. But he gets this little black sphere, it catches it, and then it ends up enveloping his entire body. And then, hey presto, we've got this new Spider-Man suit, which I honestly love. I love that whole black Spider-Man suit. And as that story kind of progressed, you started to see that this suit had its own mind. It had its own negative influence on Peter Parker and how he was behaving. And in the end, he ended up having to have it removed, and it was held by the Fantastic Four. And it was only, a few years later that when the symbiote bonded with Eddie Brock, that we really got Venom, as we're going to see in this movie. So, Chris, have you got any movie background for us?
I have indeed. Development-wise, the idea for a Venom standalone film goes back to 1997. The legend and our good friend of the show, David S. Goyer, had written a script featuring the Marvel comic character.
Friend of the show.
Dave is now being sick into his bin, which was going to be produced by New Line Cinemas, very much a B movie. Dolph Lundgren was in talks to play Venom, because obviously he'd done The Punisher and everything, which would have featured Carnage as the main antagonist to Venom. But that didn't happen. Eventually, the rights moved over to Sony when they took that and Spider-Man. But obviously, Venom was always an antagonist for Spider-Man in the comics, whereas the Venom's first on-screen show in a film was in Spider-Man 3 when Topher Grace played him, or Eddie Brock. But then Sony have pushed for a Venom film for years, going back to like 2008. At the end of Spider-Man 3, they wanted a Venom standalone film to run as like Wolverine does with the X-Men, so you sort of jumping in and out of films like Wolverine has done. They wanted a proper origins film. From 2009 onwards, it's been in pre-production basically, but a lot of it's to do with the MCU, and they don't want it to be like a crossover film because it's supposed to be a horror base. They were originally going to do it as an R-rated film and go along the lines of Logan and Deadpool and with the smaller budget. But then it got changed to a PG-13. Now, obviously, the director of that, and Tom Hardy, they wanted it as an R-rated thing, but they feel as though if Venom's going to move forward and cross over into other films, they can't have it as R-rated. Whereas, these questions with the Deadpool re-release, isn't there, as a PG-13 coming out now? Is that because they're going to make him go into the MCU? That could be something down the line. So that's one of the reasons why we don't see a lot of Venom biting people's heads off and eating the brains, which is what was depicted in the comics and stuff, even though that is the character. One of the things that stopped it again with the development was the simple fact that The Amazing Spider-Man did quite poorly, or the second one did quite poorly. They were going to release the third Amazing Spider-Man film, and then they were going to bring out a Venom film, but it just never came to pass, basically, because of what's happened. So in 2016, they pushed ahead with a Venom standalone film. Now, one of the things with Tom Hardy is Tom Hardy literally signed up straight away. He's a big fan of Venom as a character. Now he had, which is quite interesting, what he used to do when he's actually doing the film was something he did when he played the two Krays. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Dave. Legend. It's not a bad film, to be fair. He got that again. That's another one that got slated critically, but it's actually not a bad film. It's a lot better than the Kemp brothers' campy version of the Krays. But what he did was, because he was playing two people, Hardy has a listening device on. So in the morning for Venom, he would record all the symbiote voice lines and everything. And then through the day, when he was actually just doing Eddie Brock's lines, he'd have them playing back in his ears. So once they played, he would then act off what he said as a symbiote. So he had something as a cue, which is something he did in Legend when he was playing the same person, basically, the Kray twins, which is quite good. But they did allow Hardy to improvise on set completely. Fleischer, the director, actually said to him, allowed him to improvise. So like the scene where he jumps into the tank with the lobsters, that wasn't planned. It was something that he wanted to do. So they had to make up a load of fake lobsters and make sure the tank was reinforced for him to jump in that scene. So it's all things that he added in on the fly that if he didn't think they work, he would just go with it, which is quite good, to be fair. I think Tom Hardy's a great actor, so it's one of them things you're quite happy with.
Can I just ask, at what point does an actor become a national treasure? So like Michael Caine, national treasure, isn't he? Yeah. Stephen Fry, obviously not more comedian than actor, national treasure. Michael Palin, I have to say, I've got so much respect for Tom Hardy. The way he throws himself into roles, I mean, we love the Peaky Blinders, don't we? It's not quite not anything based on comic books, but plays a great role there. He was fantastic in The Revenant. Inception, I think, was the first thing I saw him in. Obviously, Bane, the way he committed and built it, changed his body shape and everything to bulk up for that role. I just think he's so impressive, and he takes on such diverse roles. I think he's one of the best talents the UK's got out there.
Oh, without that. I mean, Dave, one of the best films he's ever done. I absolutely love it, and I can watch it all the time, especially as an MMA fan. He's Warrior. That is such a good film. And as someone who has been an MMA fan since the late 90s, I'm not a fair weather UFC fan, like because of Conor McGregor, like a lot of people are with like with boxing, where everyone jumps on the fights, like the Tyson Fury one. I genuinely am a combat fan and have been for years. And what he did for that role was very limited. he wasn't a very good. He went to fighting school and everything, but the way they portray it all on that is fantastic. He, like you say, he changed his body. He went in fight camps. He's done everything. You know, he's done it with Venom as well. He went into a fight camp again and stuff like that. He was training with some of the best martial arts jiu-jitsu people in the world. Not that he uses jiu-jitsu in the film, but he just gets engrossed in it. And there is a call, Dave, especially with the Daniel Craig Bonds, for him to actually go in as, I'd be interested in as James Bond, because I think he'd be an extension of Daniel Craig's gritty James Bond.
Yeah.
That's I know he's full of tattoos, but these the ways you can get around that.
Listen, Samuel L. Jackson is about to play himself as about a 30 or 40-year-old bloke for the whole of Captain Marvel. I'm sure they can whitewash his tattoos off him. So I that's a fantastic shout. I think he'd make a great James Bond.
Exactly. And I'm with you. I love him. Absolutely love him. There's a BBC show he did last year, set in like the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And he was good in that. That was like Peaky Blinders when he plays the Jewish baker in Peaky Blinders. He was just basically an extension of him in his own show, and that was good as well. So, yeah, I'm with you. He's royalty. Sam loves him because of his looks, and if I swung that way, I'd probably like him as well, Dave, because he's a good-looking bloke, and he is a really good guy. So, anyway, getting back to that, so the film released on the 1st of October 2018. They did have to have some reshoots in June 2018, which Tom Hardy oversaw with the director. He's very much involved in this. Now, box office-wise, Dave, he's got to say it's one of the most successful films of this year. Even though I'll get to the critical response in a minute, absolute stormed it. And one of the main reasons it stormed it as well is because in China, Tencent are the ones who actually have bankrolled part of this film. And in China, it's had to have an extended run in the cinema by about another 4 or 5 weeks. So it's still going over there because it's just gone crazy. Now, it's took 212 million in US and Canada. This is as of the 2nd of December. Worldwide, it's took 633 million. So it's grossed 845 million. And it was only on for a budget of 100 million only. But, a budget of 100 million. But what they've said is to break even with everything else, they'd have to make 450 million. So they've smashed it by 400 million. So there's without doubt there's going to be a sequel. It is unbelievable. Really is unbelievable. So he's still going now. He's strong in cinema because getting to the critical response, and it's something I'd picked up on when I went to watch it, absolutely slated. On Rotten Tomatoes, it's running at 29%, and that's off 281 reviews with an average critic review rating of 4.4 out of 10. And then a Metacritic is at 35 out of 100, and that's off 46 reviews. But when you look at the actual man on the streets review, the normal people's review, the normal cinema goers review, it's at like 80%. So as I alluded to before we went into this, what do they actually know, these critics, Dave? I mean, everyone is subjective. I saw a lot of bad reviews on Bohemian Rhapsody, and that is a fantastic film. And I've only heard one person slate it out of about 20 people I know who've watched it who just didn't like it. But it's a great film, but it got slated. Now, one thing that's like not egg on the face for anybody. It's up to you. It's subjective what you think is good or bad in a film. Some people get it, some don't. But I do question if there's some sort of agenda there with this when we get into the review. But yeah, very interesting. Accolades wide, Hardy was nominated for Best Visual Effects and Animated Performance at the LA Online Critics Awards. And that's mainly just for his portrayal of Venom. Because a lot of the stuff he did, he actually had some sort of CGI suit on. So when he's playing Venom, it is actually him. It's not a CGI, character made afterwards. It's actually him with all the green and the green.
All right, he's doing a full-on Andy Serkis type of job.
Yeah. So it's all to do with him. So everything you see as Venom, even though the effects are added afterwards, is actually him portraying him, which is really good. Because I was quite interested in the voice. I didn't know it was Tom Hardy's voice, but now he obviously is with effects on.
Yeah, it's highly processed, isn't it? But I had to go and read that up as well. I was quite impressed. Again, does it make a big difference? I'm not sure it does. But again, it says a lot about how he wants to actually approach it and immerse himself into a role. Yeah,
exactly. Very good. And that's about it, Dave, for the movie background. I know there's a lot to digest there, but it's just a really interesting film.
Yeah, and it is interesting, isn't it, when you get such a discrepancy between what the critics say and what the public says. More often than not, they're broadly in alignment, aren't they? But in this case, it is an example where it seems the critics pan it, and but the public love it. And I always think back to the third Oasis album. This is a bit abstract. This, right? Critics loved it. They wrote it up, said it was fantastic. And I think, I don't know about you, Chris, but I listened to it and I thought, well, there's a few songs on there that stand out as being really good. But as an album, it was nowhere near the level that the second one was. So you're kind of listening to it and you're going, what am I not seeing that everyone else is seeing? And then over time, you realize it's sort of unspoken, and then some people speak about it, and then it's like, actually, you know what? When you look back now, everyone pans it. And I heard someone say years after that, well, what happened when the second album came out? That got panned by the critics, but then the public absolutely loved it. So when the third one came around, no one wanted to be the person who said, well, this isn't very good. Yeah. So, and be wrong a second time. So they were like, yeah, it's great. So, swimming with the tide, essentially.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a conspiracy or, they're just seeing what we're not seeing. It's very different to the source material, but I can't think that's got anything to do with the critical response. So yeah, just a little bit of an odd one. So as we go through, we can speculate on why that is as we get through it.
Cool.
So just before we get into our review then, I just want to give a quick shout out to the comicsbolt.com. So that's essentially a fan site, a review site, a news site. So if you want to go read about all things comic book related, comic book movie related, head across there. There's no clickbait stuff. This is just news written by the fans. I also want to give a shout out to the Britpod scene. They're a collective of independent British podcasts. And as we've done previously, I want to give you a taster of one of the other great podcasts that's out there. So we'll be right back with you after this short break.
It's Susie here from the Casual Birder podcast. I love watching birds, whether it's those that visit my garden or ones that I see when travelling. Birdwatching is a great pastime. It can be done with others or alone. You don't need expensive equipment, your eyes or ears are enough. And best of all, it doesn't need any great commitment. The Casual Birder does as much or as little birding as suits them. Join me each week to hear about the birds I've seen, interviews with others, and stories from listeners around the world. The Casual Birder podcast, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
So we start off with a Life Foundation probe. It basically discovers some symbiotic life forms that are on a comet, and they collect these 4 samples, of which one ends up escaping, and it basically causes the crash of the spaceship or the probe, which ends up coming down in Malaysia. Now, this nefarious kind of, or we think it's going to be nefarious, Life Foundation, basically they recover the other 3 samples, and then we start to see as the movie's kind of progressing in this opening section, they're running a bunch of tests, testing out how these symbiotes kind of operate, and can they live without oxygen, or, how do they operate with sound and what have you. And meanwhile, while all this is going on, we see this escapee symbiotic life form is doing an invasion of the body snatchers type thing, moving from host to host, person to person in Malaysia. So, Chris, what did you reckon about this, the way this whole movie opened out?
It's quite interesting. The tone is obviously. To be honest, the one thing researching is I didn't realise it wasn't an R-rated film as such. And then when you think back after you've watched, you go, "Oh right, yeah." But I must admit, the start did catch me a little bit off guard. It was very Walking Dead-like, wasn't it? Very dingy and dark, and sort of, the violence was there from the start, I suppose. And one of the things when I was researching it had said that they wanted it to be a total different entity to anything to do with like the MCU. Obviously, it's Sony's version. Now, Sony is calling it theirs, the SMU. which I don't know whether that's ever going to catch on, Dave. But they didn't want Venom.
The Smoo.
Yeah, they didn't want Venom with any reference to like Marvel, which is quite strange because one thing they picked up on as well with this start bit as well is the fact that the trailer for Venom was the same music they used in the Avengers Infinity War trailer all the way through. So people said they were trying to send subliminal messages to think this is a Marvel entity, watch it sort of thing. So it's quite interesting, the separation. And at the start, I found that really interesting, the way it started. I was intrigued because, as you know, I'm an absolute coward. So I was absolutely thinking, oh, no, don't make me jump. Please don't make me jump. But it served the purpose for what it was. It got into it pretty much straight away, didn't it? There was no messing about. It was just like, we're in. And this is what this is going to be about. I quite enjoyed it, to be fair. I thought it told what it needed to be told about the character.
Yeah, I mean, for me, going into it, I was interested, okay, so knowing the origin from the source material, and basically the reason Venom, when it bonds with Eddie Brock, well, when the symbiote bonds with Eddie Brock and then they collectively together, they become Venom, the symbiotes absorbed a lot of the Spider-Man powers, and certainly the look of Spider-Man, the black suit, the white spider across the chest. And I'm thinking, how are they going to get around that? You're going to have Venom, but Spider-Man's going to be nowhere to be seen. So how are they actually going to do that? And then, so for me, this opening scene, it's like, oh, right, okay, it's just going to be random aliens, and they just are, these symbiotes, and there's no Spider-Man. They're just more powerful. They give the host more power and whatever. So yeah, I quite enjoyed it as well. I'm the same as you, Chris. Kind of forgot whether, or didn't really even think, is this R-rated or is it PG? This opening scene, I'm thinking, all right, I think this is subliminally. I'm thinking this is R-rated. So I think this is starting off gritty, probably going to get more grisly.
Yeah. I did. I the same as you. It never crossed my mind, to be fair. And obviously then from that point, one thing I wanted to say about the thing at the start very quickly, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I can't remember the film's name. Did you ever see a film years ago with John Goodman and Denzel Washington where there was like a being that crossed from person to person by touch? And basically everyone who had it, this alien or monster, what was in people's bodies, they only knew they had it because he used to sing the Rolling Stones song, time is on my side. Yes, it is. And I know it sounds stupid, but it's that sort of the way it moved from person to person. It reminded me of that a little bit. I don't know if you've ever seen the film, Dave. It's a cracking film.
I haven't, no, but that's an interesting tell, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really bizarre that he would just sing that song, but you could never tell who the monster was because he turned into like a absolute lunatic, killing people, man, woman, kid, whatever. But then what he would do is when they were trying to reveal who he was, he'd go into someone else, but then they start singing this song, so you knew it was him, or her or whatever. It's a really weird thing to explain, but that's what I got the feeling of at the start of this. It reminded me of that when it was going from person to person.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing when it was going from person to person that I thought was a little bit odd was it seemed to go from a younger woman to a little old lady.
Yes.
And I thought, well, if you're a symbiote, surely you want a stronger host. If you're going to exhaust all of those resources, you want a stronger host. And I thought, well, why are they going for the little old lady? I couldn't quite figure it out. But she stands up a bit straighter. She's obviously she feels healthier initially when she's got this symbiote. So yeah. It never really paid off. I don't think. I did that. No, I agree. And I think as well, the only problem I have with the old lady is if the symbiote's in her body, how did she know to go on a plane to America? Do you know what I mean? Why would you just randomly go from Asia, where obviously Malaysia, where this has happened? Why would you then make that journey across the waters? It's like, we understand it's a plot device, but that's one thing that I did think was a bit unexplained. I know she's still got a human form, but I just couldn't get my head around how that worked. What was the reasoning behind that? Yeah, so let's maybe come back to that because I think what happens when this. So we find out later who this symbiote is.
Yes.
What happens when they kind of take over someone is just that takes over them.
Yeah.
It's Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The old person doesn't seem to exist or have any control. Versus what happens when the other people, everyone else basically in the story, is merged with this symbiote. They seem to have both life beings at play, don't they? So
yes, yeah. You're right. I just like to say it's just something that I couldn't explain. It did. I mean, to be honest, it didn't take me away from the film, but it was just one of the things, like you say, sometimes if you think too much about it, it just, it'll take you away from what you're watching. But,
let me say this without spoiling who that is until we get there. But I think the reason, why would someone land on any, massive rock spinning through space and suddenly go from one side of it to the other side? I think it was trying to get back to the others, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So that was it. The exact same thought did occur to me after I saw it. It's like, why would you go there? But I think I can almost buy that they were trying to get back and they somehow knew where the other symbiotes were.
Yeah, you could be right. That makes more sense, to be fair. But yeah, so we meet Eddie Brock then, don't we, Tom Hardy? He's obviously some sort of internet sensation, YouTube, investigative journalist, isn't he?
Bit like yourself, Chris.
Exactly, Dave, exactly. Anyone who's seen my vlogs recently, exactly. But yeah, he's like that. He's obviously controversial, stands up for what he believes in. He sets an interview up, doesn't he, with his Carlton Drake, the CEO of Life Foundation, which you said to me before we done this. It's the guy out of Rogue One. One of the main stars. And straight away, he comes across as a nice guy, but then behind closed doors, this Drake is an absolute nasty man, isn't he? And he's just out for experimenting on animals, isn't he, and stuff. And then he's like, look, we're going for full human experiment. So Eddie knows something's going on. He confronts him, gives him a bit of abuse, gets kicked out. But then Eddie's obviously girlfriend, who's rather pretty, and is it Weighing? She's a lawyer, but she's a defense lawyer for the Life Foundation for a lawsuit for around these human trials. But in their moments of passion and that, Eddie decides to go to the fridge to get a drink and then reads a load of confidential information, doesn't he, about the Life Foundation, which, he then goes to Drake, gives him a load of abuse, and then she decides to dump him, doesn't she? Because he's obviously betrayed her. And jeopardised his job as well. Because he gets really headstrong, doesn't he, when he's got a story to tell sort of thing.
Yeah, he sort of can't help himself, can he? And so, he'd given Drake some challenging questions which he didn't really want to answer. And there's only one way he could have got that information. So his fiancée, she loses her job and promptly dumps him, and I thought, we'd seen a little bit of them together. He'd sort of said that he's moved to San Francisco for her, and I thought the dumping, I thought he took it fairly weakly. He didn't put up much of a fight at all. It's like she walks off, and that's like, oh well. But then I guess he's essentially, had his life ruined. He loses his job, can't really get another job. He's lost his fiance, and he's really down on his luck from that point. And then we fast forward 6 months, and then basically we see Life Foundation, so Carlton's team, they're getting closer to achieving this symbiosis where two beings can live together in harmony. We meet this Dora Skirth. I assume she's a doctor, and she's obviously she's on the team, but she's getting concerned that Drake is he's pushing it too far, and he's going way beyond the bounds of any reasonable ethics. She goes to find Brock, and basically she wants him to expose these experiments, and so she basically helps him to break into the Life Foundation facility and try and find some evidence.
Yeah.
Then we get a little. Have you ever seen Resident Evil?
No, but I've played the games and that. I know the pretense of it. I know the film's supposed to be pretty good, to be fair.
Yeah, certainly the first one I quite liked, and it is one of the better movies based on a video game. But to me, this reminded me a little bit of that. I'm sure if I went back and watched it, the effects and the stage and everything that's set up wouldn't be as good. But the lab and the people behind glass panels thing, just reminded me of that. But Eddie recognizes someone as Maria as a homeless person that he knew, and basically tries to free her, which we know as the audience seems to be like a bad idea. But he breaks the glass, frees Maria, and then she attacks him, and she's obviously got a symbiote possessing her, and then it transfers across to Eddie, doesn't it? And then he manages to escape, but then starts to see some interesting side effects of being in this Life Foundation.
Yeah, really. And I think as well, Dave, this has happened pretty quick, but you've got to say, you sort of know Dora Skirf's fate already, don't you? He's pretty much thrown in front of you what she's done now, because obviously Eddie's well on to this. He's been infected. It's weird because obviously Eddie then escapes, doesn't he, from the compound, and they're chasing him through the forest, aren't they? But he ends up, when he's just about to be sort of captured and that, he jumps up to the top of a tree, doesn't he, or climbs up to the top of a tree and realises he's got some sort of weird superpowers. But he's absolutely sweating profusely, innit? He don't know what's going on. He's hearing these voices, innit? He's absolutely deranged. And I think Tom Hardy, as an actor, these are the sort of roles that he's bread and butter, aren't they? This sort of split personality. I know Craig's legend is he's two different people, Ronnie and Reggie Craig, but he plays these characters so well, doesn't he? He's really clever actor, and I think that maniacal panic that he portrays when he's acting, especially with this Venom thing, I'm just engrossed in it, Dave. I think it's like you're saying about him being a national treasure. I think he's believable whatever character he plays.
Yeah, very much so. And you believe, you're almost shaking watching him. You believe he's got that fever. He's he knows he's in trouble. And so, I'm absolutely, at this point, I'm fully bought in to the performance that he's delivering there. And he goes to sort of find his ex-fiancée, and then she didn't hang about.
No, she's well in there, isn't she, with that guy? Yeah, straight up.
So Dr. Dan Lewis, he's got his own key and everything, and he doesn't seem like a bad guy, to be honest, but it did leave a bit of sour taste in my mouth. It's like, well, this isn't that long ago. You're supposed to be marrying Eddie, and you're already shacked up with this other bloke.
Yeah, and I must admit, I did think with him coincidentally being a scientist doctor type, he's a doctor, wasn't he? I am thinking, has he got something to do with it? Because it was all, in the end, not to spoil it, but in the end, it didn't make any difference. But I got a very much an Ant-Man and Wasp or Ant-Man feel vibe about the husband, Ant-Man's wife's husband, the new guy.
Yeah.
It had that feel about it. I wasn't sure whether he was going to double dip her and be a psycho, and that was their sort of getting back together. But obviously, Dan is the man sort of thing. He's only concerned for Eddie's well-being, which is quite unusual as her ex-boyfriend. But he run. This is where we got the scene where he said about him jumping in the actual.
In the lobster tank.
And then, because he's overeating, he just bites the head off in front of everyone, doesn't he? Everyone's like, his top restaurant, and Eddie's just absolutely on one.
I mean, there's like a pendulum, isn't there? So is the new boyfriend going to be an absolute tool, or just, he's somehow linked to the Life Foundation? I actually think, this Dr. Lewis, he's way over on the other side. So you got this crazy ex-boyfriend who does look absolutely mad as a box of frogs. Jumping in the lobster tank and eating live lobsters. And it's like, oh no, I'm still going to try and help him. I think that is way beyond the call of duty on how you treat your partner's ex-boyfriend, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. And then from that situation, obviously Dan then runs a load of tests on Eddie, doesn't he? And Eddie's obviously got this parasite, or it's something he's never seen before, has he? And he's saying to we've got to run tests. Now, the next bit is quite funny, Dave, because I'm enjoying the film. There's no doubt about it. You know, Tom Hardy's the man. I'm loving the whole inception of like the foreshadow of Venom, when we're going to see him, you know, and all that properly and stuff. But this Dora Skirth, the scientist or whatever she is, it was like she goes back to the Life Foundation, doesn't she? And, you know, she goes back when it's pitch black. They let her in. It's like, come on. It's not. It was almost like Batman 1966, the way she tiptoed her way back into the Life Foundation after they've had this symbiote hybrid in Brock who's just escaped. And then she gets caught, doesn't she? You know, like Drake catches her straight away. And I was like, surely she mustn't be that daft in this day and age with cameras and everything, not to think if I go back there, I'm in trouble. Someone's going to see me on camera coming back. You know, it was like, that's the only bit of the film where I was a bit like, oh, come on. I can see, we knew straight away that this woman was not going to end well in the film. She's definitely not going to be in the sequel. You know what I mean? So it was just, it's not the end of the world, but you know what I mean? Like it's literally laid out in front of you what's going to happen to this woman.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of naivety, she's right up. You know, it's turned up to 11, isn't it? You know, you either just give Eddie the tip off and hope no one ever finds out, or you know, you after the whole kind of break-in has gone a bit wrong, you just put as many oceans as you can in between you and this Life Foundation. But to just wander back in, you know, it's only going one way. And I think again, just for the story, it's probably, you know, it's another level again, isn't it? That, you know, it's not just not that like performing experiments on homeless people is in any way okay, but you know, it's like, well, not only are they doing that, but they're just, you know, even their own, you know, scientists, they're just murdering them.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's the only bit that was a bit thin for the first. Very good point, actually. Now, obviously, Drake, she's in the chamber, isn't she? So Drake then decides to leave the room, and the symbiote gets released and kills her. And obviously now Eddie is the only apparent symbiote that they know of, don't they? So they've now got to try and capture it, haven't they? Now there's a bit of a little subplot going on here, because Eddie's apartment, he lives next door to a heavy metal freak, doesn't he? Who's an absolute nut job. He's already had a word with him like once or twice about his noise, but you know, the Life Foundation said a load of mercenaries, don't they, to come and take Eddie out. And this is where we sort of get. Now, we're about 40 minutes into the film now, aren't we? Now, one of the things, I don't know about you, Dave, it didn't mean anything to me. I thought the pacing was right. But listening to a few people today at work and that, they would ask me what we were reviewing, you know, some of the people who listen to the podcast.
Uh-huh.
And I said, oh, it's Venom we're doing today. And he said, oh, I've not seen it. One of the lads said, but a couple of them in there have said, like, oh, it took ages for him to be revealed that he was Venom. But once he became Venom, it was a great film and all this. And I'm like, and I was thinking, I didn't get that feeling at all. I don't know about you. Did you feel like the reveal of Venom was too long? Or
you know what? So I've stayed away from the critics' reviews. I just have a kind of meta awareness of them. Okay, so I haven't read any reviews or anything before we got into this. But honestly, I was thinking Superman the movie.
Yeah.
Because, you know, where it takes basically 50 minutes before we actually see Superman. And this linear origin story, it did feel like it took a long time for him to actually become Venom. Now, that's not, I say that just as a kind of factual statement. It's not that I think it should be told in a different way, but I can see why someone would think, oh, this is taking a long time to get going.
Yeah. I didn't. It's good though, isn't it? It's good that everyone has their own opinion, but I was quite surprised by that, Dave. I really was. And like you say, the Superman, because what we're talking about is our first ever review. That was one of the main things we said, didn't we? It takes that long for him to become Superman. That the next minute, all the action was crammed into about a 15-minute segment, wasn't it? You know, and so yeah, a very good spot. Good spot.
I mean, think about something. So I tell about that linear storytelling. A lot of the Marvel movies, I think, right, I'll use a couple of examples. So Deadpool, right? You're thrown in there straight away, and he's Deadpool. And through the story, as the story progresses, you get these kind of flashbacks. How did he become Deadpool? So you kind of get the origin story, but it's not done in a linear way.
Yes.
For the 2008 Iron Man. So it took, I have no idea, I've not timed it or anything, but there's a significant kind of action sequence, isn't there, with our main protagonist. So fairly early on in the film, you see he's blown up in this army convoy and he's captured. So something of significance has happened straight away. What we've seen here is, okay, so he's been infected by the symbiote, and the action we've seen with characters before that we don't really care about. A bunch of nameless astronauts, although one of them was John Jameson, who's James Jonah Jameson's son, by the way. Little Easter egg there for you.
Oh, nice.
But we haven't had a big action sequence with our main protagonist. And I was thinking that is the only difference. Again, that's not a criticism. I'm just trying to understand, okay, so why would someone have a real problem with this story?
Yeah. No, I think that's more logical. But like I say, me personally, I didn't even think about it, to be honest. I just thought it was an origin story. And, we'll get that, hopefully, if we get a sequel, I suppose, action from the start. But yeah, that's a fair comment from you and from them. But obviously, we see now, get back to the film, Eddie starts transforming, doesn't he? The SWAT team come to take him out, and we're getting arms everywhere. He's throwing him across the room. The guy next door comes out, who's had problems with the noise, and realises, maybe I should have turned the volume down last time, and he shuts the door and leaves it. And then obviously Eddie then gets out, or Venom.
Can I just interject there again? So obviously there's a lot of CGI going on here, but the body acting from Tom Hardy, again, I just have to call it out. I think it's brilliant. The way he's got that kind of body movement where he's not fully in control of his body. And again, the CGI is enhancing, it's making the kind of black symbiote kind of shoot out of his body in different ways and attack the mercenaries. But I think Tom Hardy, again, just completely nails it.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree, Dave. Like I say, he's just so good. And I think he's probably having an understanding of the the comic book origins of Venom as well, has helped with what he depicts in his head. And I think it's just great. I think it's really good. And there's a bit of inner conflict then, isn't there, between Eddie and Venom then, aren't they? Because they're sort of talking to each other, aren't they? Because, Eddie's starting to enjoy the fact he's got these powers from this scene. And the only thing I want to say, Dave, sorry to cut is when I was researching this, which I don't know whether this is in the comics, so please tell me if I'm wrong, but they're actually labeling this film a love story.
Really?
Yes, between Venom and Eddie Brock, because there's a scene, isn't there, where he kisses him, which is a bit unusual. And they're saying that the reason Venom has taken Eddie Brock's body is because he actually likes him. And that's why, and it's like an inner turmoil. And a lot of the critics were saying that they got a vibe that it was a bit of a love story, which I did not get that one bit. I just saw it as a split personality. But that's not just one article I've read. I've read quite a few over the last few days. I didn't get that vibe at all.
I think the symbiote likes Eddie for sure. Now the Venom kind of symbiote has merged or bonded with other people as well. One we get to see in a bit, which we'll talk about then. But you did mention the kiss, so okay, I guess I'll mention it now. So She-Venom, Anne, his ex-fiance. I thought that kiss was more about them two and Venom causing it more than Eddie kissing Venom kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree.
So I no, don't get a love story. Obviously, there is a bond there, but no, I don't see it as a love story, to be honest.
No, me neither. Just thought I'd bring that one up before I forget, that's all.
Yeah.
Especially as we've got the Venom alter ego now.
What I was gonna say when I was taking a breath there was, for me, again, I'm going along with this linear origin story, but when he starts to have Venom's voice and we can hear it, I think then the film steps up a notch.
Yes.
It does definitely pick up the pace and gets more engaging at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's because you're trying to work out this character, right? He's not a character people are familiar with, Dave, as well. So it's quite interesting how he's going to come across.
Yeah, and I like kind of when they're having that conversation, and he's on the tram, isn't he, in San Francisco, and he's got all this stuff going on in his head, but he's trying to act as normal as he possibly can in front of everyone else. I think the other thing I got from around this is, again, maybe people at Sony, maybe they are trying to take some of the positive things from some of the better comic book movies. So there's a bit of humor in there. And again, I thought for the Amazing Spider-Man movies, there really wasn't that much humor in them. And they, certainly previously, I would say some of the DC stuff, just very, very dark and focused on that. I think, looking forward, I think they're learning lessons, and it's that we're going to get some brighter movies. But definitely some of the comedy, both in just the writing and Hardy's performance, come across in this bit.
Yeah, you do really well, Dave. And again, great acting from Hardy.
The other, I mentioned Superman the movie. The other thing that came into my mind kind of around about this time in the movie, where earlier on in the movie we've seen Eddie. He's a bit of a shrinking violet, isn't he? He's this tenacious journalist, so he's right up in people's faces. He'll do whatever it takes to get the story, but in his day-to-day life he's quite submissive. So we see the thug hold up the lady at the 7-Eleven or whatever it is, and he just avoids any conflict. When his ex-fiance just walked off, he didn't make any play, and he didn't shout after her, come back, I'll do anything. He's quite submissive. And then you start to see this kind of evil, or perceived as evil, force. He's after biting people's heads off and stuff. But it starts to almost have a positive impact on him. And I was thinking back to Cobra Kai, where, you've had this historically evil force. And then in the new YouTube series, you get these downtrodden kids at high school, and then they learn a bit more about Cobra Kai, and then it starts to have a positive influence on them. I kind of was thinking this around Eddie. He starts to quite enjoy it, and he starts to fight for himself a bit more. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. And then obviously he goes to the press, doesn't he, his old stomping ground, to sort of put evidence on against Drake. But there's the SWAT team there now, aren't they? So we see him again transform into Venom. But Anne, coincidentally, who's there, she witnesses the whole thing, doesn't she? And she decides to sort of take him to see Dr. Dan again.
Yeah.
To find out what's actually wrong with him, which leads into quite a good little section now, because Dr. Dan does like the thing on him, or Dr. Louis, shall we say, does the tests on him and realises that the symbiote's actually killing Eddie. He's slowly rotting his internal organs.
Yeah.
Now, Venom says to Eddie, like, it is fixable, and says like, and Eddie alludes to the fact that the weaknesses are fire and high-pitched noise, which Dr. Dan, being a doctor, decides to put Eddie into an MRI scan, which separates Eddie from the symbiote. But while this has been happening, Eddie leaves something, but he's captured by Drake's men. Well, he hasn't got the symbiote on him. He hasn't got Venom attached to his body. So that whole segment there, I thought was quite good, to be fair, Dave.
Yeah. So again, and I liked that we saw the full Venom, didn't we? And again, I was looking to try and see. So we didn't get the white spider kind of look. He's just a big, massive brute, isn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, in this little section here, again, we get, Dr. Lewis. He seems like a stand-up bloke. He's just trying to help his partner's crazy ex-boyfriend with good intentions, it seems. And Eddie and the symbiote end up getting separated. But the symbiote, this is not an air-sealed containment unit, is it? So, it escapes up the air vent.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think the mercenaries are they're thinking when they're taking on Eddie, they're taking on what they've seen before, so kind of need to take him down quickly, but then quickly realize, he doesn't actually have these superpowers anymore.
No, and the next section, obviously, of the film, we get Drake, the bad guy. He sort of comes across for the fact that the symbiote that we see at the start, that was in the Malaysian lady. She travels to San Francisco, which I think, to be fair, Dave, now you've explained it. You've explained it better than probably the film does. But she's coming to where all the other symbiotes are, isn't she?
Yeah, I think so. And the fact that this Riot, he seems like the leader of the symbiotes, doesn't he? So, yes. he's going to find these out and they, put together his invasion force.
Exactly. And Riot then bonds with Drake, who agrees to use the Life Foundation probe, doesn't he, to go and get the rest of the symbiotes down on Earth, which the guy's the bad guy anyway. That's a little bit thin for me and a little bit too obvious that he then becomes a symbiote as well, which is what he's been experimenting on.
It was convenient, wasn't it? And you know what? Again, loving the movie and at this point, and it's going through. But we do always say, don't we? It's kind of what makes a great movie is quite often the baddie.
Yeah,
and it's not really. It's just, again, it's a movie where you've just got the mirror of the hero is the villain.
Yeah.
So it's just another Venom, isn't it? And that you've got this evil kind of CEO businessman type. It's just it wasn't a great villain for me.
No, and I think what would have worked better for me personally, Dave, is if we'd seen Riot earlier, from the fact that Drake was doing these experiments because he wanted to have the symbiote in his body. That would have made perfect sense. He wasn't willing to put his body on the line just yet, but that's why he was doing the experiments on the animals, on then obviously the homeless people.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them took, and once it took and the human trials worked, he then steps up. A bit like the Green Goblin and stuff like that in Spider-Man and that, yeah. It's like a last minute thing, but he then decides to say. So that for me would have made more sense if he'd been in the film a bit longer, because I do agree. I think Riot is totally underused. He's only in the film for literally 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And we get Venom saying to Eddie, Riot is, horrendous, basically. He's like so powerful. And if he gets, takes over and brings him down to Earth, that we're going to be in trouble. And Eddie's sort of asking Venom, can you defeat him? Sort of thing. And Venom even sort of saying he's too powerful for me. But, Anne just decides, she doesn't decide, but Anne bonds with Venom, doesn't she? So they can get Eddie free from Life Foundation. And she rescues Eddie. And then obviously Venom then goes into Eddie's body again. And he's back with him. Now, the only bit I've got to say, like I say, there's a couple of things I've picked up on it, and I'm the same as you. I say loving the film, and I genuinely, I am. It's the sort of film I will go back to because it's just something you don't have to think about. You can just watch it and enjoy it for what it is, in my opinion. It's the bit where the Venom says to him, I really like you. I've grown to like her, so I want to protect it. That was a little bit thin for me, Dave. A little bit too convenient.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I mean, I was just letting my brain process some of what you said there. I think that would have been a much better move to make that Green Goblin comparison. So if there was almost kind of a seduction of Riot, trying to coerce Carlton Drake and seeing some back and forth between the two. We know Carlton Drake is a fairly nasty person, but the way the bonding happened, it was all just a bit convenient. And then, he's quite willing to throw the human race under the bus, it seems. That needed more for sure. And bonding with the symbiote and becoming the she-venom. Again, what was a little bit strange was just, where she's like, I bit people's heads off. And it's a bit like, it's a bit almost like a comedy line. You can almost say wah, wah, wah,
Yeah.
Well, in the comics, she ends up committing suicide because she can't get over the fact of about what she's done.
Yeah, because side effects to her being Venom, is there?
No,
No,
she's just like, oh, well, that was a bit weird, wasn't it? Bit people's heads off. Whereas you would think a more, you know, I would almost say that is a more comic booky reaction than what happened in the comics, which is, you know, that's not normal. And if you've got all those memories of about what you've done, God, that's going to keep you awake. And I can imagine, you know, that's going to have dire consequences.
And I think as well, Dave, and whether they allude to that in a sequel, but what would have been more sustainable for Venom to go on a rampage was if Anne had sacrificed herself, knowing that if Venom was in her body, she's going to die, or she's got some sort of timescale on him being in her body because he's not compatible with her. But he was compatible, and then she just hands it over like she's giving him a letter or something, doesn't she?
Yeah.
I think that would have had more weight to Venom and going after, you know, Drake and Riot and stuff more than just saving the symbiotes coming down, because it would have had more of a purpose for Eddie to be raged and stuff, not just Venom, you know. So
yeah, I did like the line, where Venom's sort of saying, you know, I'm a bit of a loser like you, you know. You know, that was supposed to be his motivation for wanting to become, you know, Venom, protector of the Earth. But I couldn't buy it. It was really, really weak. That for me about, you know, suddenly he's part of this invasion force and then he becomes this protector of Earth. I just couldn't buy it, and that was probably one of the low points in the movie for me, where it just took me out of it, and I just thought, no, come on, you've not worked for that at all. You've just conveniently said, okay, let's protect the Earth now, because I kind of like it.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't see anything. We didn't see anything about what he liked, you know. And so for me, that great. So like Wolverine is an anti-hero, isn't he? He sort of doesn't really want to go out there, puff his chest out like Captain America hero style. But he ends up in these situations where he ends up having to be heroic. But for me, this was like saying Venom is a full-on villain, then he's a full-on hero.
Yeah. From nowhere.
Yeah, from nowhere.
Usually they have some sort of conscience position, don't they, where literally at the last dying seconds they then get a prick of conscience and become good, don't they? Or there's something that triggers it. There's nothing that triggered it other than the fact that he was enjoying it on Earth, which we'd not really got that. I suppose when you look back now, to be fair, we didn't really have any sort of background to that comment, really, did we? Because he'd not been Venom for very long.
No, that's what I mean. It was just like, right, I want to save Earth. You know, I quite like it here. Whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
Again, sorry, go on.
No, as we're talking about it, you're correct. You are absolutely on the money there, mate.
And, you know, think about another abstract one, Return of the Jedi, right? So, again, for 3 films, we've seen Darth Vader be pretty evil and, you know, he's unshakable in his belief in the dark side of the Force. But then when the Emperor is essentially killing his son, you get that camera work. You see, you know, the light flashing in his face. You see, even though he's behind a mask, you see with the body movements, you know, there's doubt in him. You know, he's looking at the Emperor, looking at his son. You've got that doubt, that conflict. And then he decides he's going to do what is the heroic thing. We didn't get anything, you know, and that was like a few seconds there. Yeah. So, I again, for me, if I was to be pretty critical of anything, it was that about turn. And I think they could have done a much, much better job of that.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And then now we're at the battle, aren't we, between Venom and Riot? Drake's in the ship, isn't he? And they're going to sort of fire it up to space, aren't they? And Venom has got to stop that ship going up and sort of bringing all the symbiotes down, and Riot's there, and we get the battle then, don't we?
Yeah.
Which Venom had made out that Riot was the man, and you don't mess with him. But he did give him a fair old go at it, didn't he, Dave? It was a good battle, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, again, you've got, in a dark kind of setting, you've got 2 predominantly, you know, black gooey characters, and you know, lots of CGI work. I poor choice of villain for me. So, you know, it was okay. probably cost a lot of money, more money than I'll ever earn in my life. But it just I wasn't. It was a battle at the end, wasn't it? And I like the fact that they didn't say, "Oh, well, Venom's a loser," but he beats Riot just because he's our protagonist. So he does kind of lose the fight, but he ends up blowing up the ship, which kills Riot and Drake. Or at least we think, we're led to believe that.
Yeah, I agree. It's a shame, not a shame, because the film's still enjoyable. It's a great film, but like I say, there is little bits there which I can sort of see why the reviews were. We've picked up on a couple of things, haven't we, Dave? I think it's what do you expect out of these sort of films? And some of it was by numbers, wasn't it? But it's still an enjoyable film. There's some good set pieces in this, especially with Tom Hardy, because obviously we haven't mentioned he rides a motorbike a lot, doesn't he? So there's a great scene mid to the film where they're chasing him and he's using Venom's arms and everything to sort of maneuver himself around San Francisco, isn't he, and kill all these the SWAT team that are pursuing him. So there's some great set pieces in the film. There really is when he sort of reveals himself as Venom. Some of the best. It's almost like the start of the middle of the Black Panther when he's getting chased around, is it Japan or China? And they're all chasing him, aren't they? Andy Serkis's character's chasing him and stuff. And that's really good when he's on the bonnet of the car and stuff with Suri and that. So he's very much in that vein where he's got all these people chasing him. So there's some cracking things. But I do agree the fight at the end is a bit weak. And, obviously Venom beats Riot eventually, doesn't he, and makes the rocket explode. And Anne assumes that all the symbiote's dead, don't she, and stuff.
We see, it's quite convenient, isn't he, that Eddie falls into the ocean, essentially, so he doesn't get killed. But it looks like Venom might have been burned up in this fire. And doesn't he say like, goodbye, Eddie, or something? Yeah. So we think for a few minutes there, we think, oh, Venom's dead. And then, we see Eddie's talking to Anne, so they're a bit more amicable now. And she does assume that the symbiote's dead. But then we get some of that internal dialogue, so we can tell Venom's still there in his head. We can hear Venom's voice. And, they start to discuss like a code, almost Dexter style, so we can't kill everyone, we can't bite everyone's head off, but you can do maybe if they're really, really bad people, so again we're sort of setting the scene for if there's going to be a sequel. I assume there's going to be a sequel. They're not just going to go off randomly killing people. There is a code there.
Yeah, because one of the things with it, which was used heavily in the PR and the marketing of the film and with the trailers and that, is these like an Asian lady's shop that Eddie goes in at the start, and these are obviously some sort of Mexican cartel guy coming in wanting sort of danger money sort of thing off her, isn't there? And he robs the poor old woman. Eddie stands there, doesn't he, and doesn't do anything at the start because the guy's obviously got a gun. He's some sort of gangster, and he gets out. Well, then come to this section now where we realise that Venom is alive and they're having that inner turmoil. He comes in again into the same shop, very much a la Superman 2 when he goes back and...
I was thinking Superman 2 as well.
Yeah, when he goes and beats the trucker up at the end, which is still one of my favourite scenes in any film. I love that. I always put it on YouTube, funny enough, that scene, Dave.
Yeah, I just think it's so against Superman though, but anyway.
Yeah, very, very Superman. So the guy comes in and then Venom does actually bite his head off, but we don't see it, do we, Dave? He basically... says to her, what does he say? He drops a joke in, doesn't he? Like he's got a bit of wind or something after he's killed this guy. But basically, he's never going to bother her again for any danger money anyway. But what I've got to say, Dave, and it's something me and you had discussed, is I genuinely wish that this dialogue between Eddie and Venom had started halfway through the film, because that little section, the last 2 or 3 minutes where they're talking and he's got that inner turmoil, he's walking down the street in San Francisco after he's left Anne, and then we get this scene in the supermarket. Genuinely, if that had been in the film, that would have elevated it to a Deadpool type film, because the humour and the dialogue between them I thought was fantastic, and it just wasn't enough. It was literally 1 or 2 scenes at the end, and I just thought they missed a little beat with that. It would have elevated his character to be a lot more likable, I think, as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like I say, I mentioned Deadpool there, and just because if we'd have been launched straight in, and Venom and Eddie were already bonded. And then we had the same scenes, but just done in that non-linear way. And we had that dialogue, that back and forth. Maybe that would have been a bit better. I don't know. I feel in my gut it would. Because as we mentioned earlier on when we were talking, for me, when we have that back and forth between Eddie and Venom, that's when the film steps up.
Yeah.
And becomes better.
Yeah, because he's not just a monster. Venom is actually a character. It's obviously, it's a symbiote, but he's actually using Eddie's body and brain and everything in it to transmit who he is. But it's the two people in one, and it's a great dialogue between them both. I really enjoyed that. I said it to Sam, my wife, when we were watching it as we finished the film. I said, I wish they'd done a bit more of that as we walked out. I felt that was really, that was the direction of the film, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so obviously we've got the end. They walk off, alluding to hopefully a sequel. And then we get a mid-credits scene, don't we, Dave?
We do. And my well, I have a little bit of a sweet and sour view on this mid-credits scene because, one, I didn't realize Woody Harrelson was going to pop up.
No.
So kind of a very big actor to play or potentially play in a sequel for this franchise. But he turns up and it turns out, we've got this, Eddie's got this interview with this serial killer, and then the name is dropped of Cletus Cassidy.
Yeah.
Now, Cletus basically says there'll be carnage when he escapes. And I could have mentioned this before, actually. So again, in the comics, Venom, he's really the first one. And then you have other symbiotes who are spawned from Venom. So including Carnage, including Riot and a few others as well. So that's how each of those spawned symbiotes still have the Spider-Man type powers. But because Cletus is a serial killer, he's like Venom, but badder.
Yeah.
And there's been a few mini-series of Carnage, and I love reading him. Again, when we were talking about Daredevil, I was saying I love Bullseye because he's just that absolute clinical psychopath, just evil person. Cletus and Carnage are the same. Venom's pretty, he's biting people's heads off. He's not a nice, he's not ET friendly alien, is he? But Carnage is one level up from that. Now, the sour bit to it is, though, you cannot have Carnage in a movie that is PG-13. If you are going to make it PG-13, don't do it. Keep Carnage out of it. If you're going to do that character, it has to be R-rated. Has to be.
Yeah. It's funny because reading up the research on this, they've wanted Woody Harrelson in a Venom film for years, Dave. And they were actually toying with the fact of using Carnage in this film. And they thought, no, we want to keep the origin to a point. Maybe that's why we only saw Riot at the end. But it's very heavily going to be, if there is a sequel, Carnage is going to be in it. And a lot of it was all designed and written for, if there is going to be a sequel, it's going to be for Woody Harrelson playing him. But they've wanted him in this world for a long time. I don't know why. I don't know whether that comes across. He only literally says a couple of lines, which I didn't know. I didn't realise it was him at first. And I was like, oh, yeah, good call. Because he seems to have a bit of renaissance, hasn't he, in films recently?
Yeah, I mean, he was in Star Wars, wasn't he?
I've got to say something, Dave.
Go on.
I've got to say something, and you can absolutely slap me down. And I want to apologise to everyone out there. I did watch Solo when I was going to Las Vegas. I watched Infinity War, and obviously it's a 10-hour flight. And then I watched Solo, and I actually enjoyed it, Dave.
Oh, that's all right.
And I'm joking because I absolutely slated Solo, didn't I, with you? And I genuinely thought, I don't want to watch it, but because there wasn't a lot of selection, I thought, go on then, I'll watch it. And I actually enjoyed it. I was quite surprised in it, watching it the second time, because I've not gone near it when it's been there. I just won't watch it because I was just really disappointed, but I actually enjoyed it. And Woody Harrelson's pretty good in it, to be fair. So that's what I mean with the Renaissance. He's someone who seems to be popping up everywhere now, doesn't he? And he always plays a good bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I still always think of Cheers when I think of him, but
Yeah.
in Natural Born Killers,
Oh,
he does pull that off well. But I just very quickly on Solo, I think I enjoyed it as well. I just thought the whole thing was fairly unnecessary,
yeah.
and so didn't have any, still have no desire to go back and rewatch it. But if I end up watching it again, I'm sure I would probably find some kind of enjoyment out of it.
Sorry, it was just a side note. It wasn't to take you away. I just thought I forgot to mention it in the chit chat, but yeah, especially with us bringing Harrison up. But yeah, I agree. And what they do with him, Dave, if he's going to be R-rated, and you know the character better than I do, then it could be another misbeat sort of thing, which you don't really want with someone like that. If he's an important character in the Venom world, then you're going to have to do him justice, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to differentiate him from Venom. And again, so the symbiote kind of, it enhances everything, positive and negative, mostly negative about that person, and again, I just think if you're going to have a symbiote take over the body of a real serial killer, as opposed to Eddie, who, just fundamentally seems to be a good guy, you need to differentiate them. And I don't think you can do that. I think they've pushed the boundaries on the PG-13 stuff. I'll take my kids to see, like the Avengers movies, which are PG-13. I won't show them Venom because it is pushing the boundaries a little bit more. But I think there's, if you're going to have Venom and Carnage in the same movie, for me at least, it's got to be R-rated, and then just knock yourself out. Just really go to town on showing what an evil person this Cletus Cassidy is.
Yeah, and I think as well, he's going off some of the older things that we reviewed, and we've mentioned this a couple of times now, like Judge Dredd, like Swarm. If they'd gone full on R-rated, it may have saved the actual film. So I'm not saying that this needs saving, in my opinion, because we get to the reviews in a sec, but I think there's a lot more depth to the character and what more comic book based stuff they could have done with that. And I think the R-rated thing would have given that freedom, basically. But it is what it is. But I will hold judgment on a sequel, Dave, if there is going to be one with that one. But now, Dave, just before we go into the reviews, if you don't mind, I just want to give another mention to our sponsor, Sudio. Now, if you get over to Sudio's website, www.sudio.com, and anything you buy over there, which is all the latest technology, headsets, Bluetooth, wireless headsets, we've got wired headsets, earbuds, some of the best out there, guys. Honestly, me and Dave are testament to that, and we wear them all the time. I wear mine in the gym, out and about. Please get on there, some great products. If you use the code Comics in Motion Podcast, you get 15% off all orders, and with every order, all the way up to Christmas, you get a free Christmas gift box, which includes a few goodies, free delivery, and also some free wireless TO earphones. So get over there, guys. That's www.sudio.com. So, Dave, are you ready to go into the reviews?
Yeah, let's go for it. Now, Chris, do you want to go first?
Of course, with me being away, Dave, and you having to hold the fort. And big thanks to Dan last week, Dan96, for filling the void. It was a good episode, that, actually. So review-wise, again, picked a couple of holes in it. It wasn't being too negative because I absolutely loved the film. I'm a massive Tom Hardy fanboy, as I mentioned at the start. Love the guy as an actor. Anything he does, I lap up. Even that horrible love story film he did a few years ago where he's a CIA agent, which was absolutely atrocious, but we still watched that, me and Sam, and enjoyed it. And it was just basically two agents fighting over one girl. But anything he's in, he gives 110%. He puts his body on the line. He gets in full, mode. Going into a fight camp for this film is just unbelievable what they have to go for in a fight camp. And it was a proper MMA fight camp because of what he'd done in Warrior. Can't knock him. I just wish that the inner dialogue between the two, which is a real high point of the film, is only in it for literally 2 or 3 minutes at the end. If that had been in and we'd had a better introduction to Riot and the Venom character, and pretty much what you'd said, Dave, as well. But please don't listen to the critics' review, because go and watch it for yourself and make your mind up. You might not enjoy it, you might enjoy it, but everyone I know who's gone to watch it has really enjoyed it. I mean, even people who I know are really picky about the films. So for me, I'm going to send it to Atlantis because I just think it's a great film, and hopefully it's a great introduction to the Venom character as well, which will lead on to at least 1 or 2 sequels. What about yourself, Dave?
Very good. So I think for me, I'm not too far away from yourself. I mean, I mentioned before, I've tried to stay away from reviews, certainly spoilers or anything, but you can't help but, through osmosis kind of absorb some of this stuff, some of the sentiment that's coming out. And I was really excited for this movie coming out. I thought, right, they could take it in a really dark direction. And we'd seen Venom on screen in Spider-Man 3, but that was really a late insertion into the script that was pushed in by the studio just to try and get the character in there. So they never really did him justice. So I thought here, he gets his own movie. They can really do him justice. But then you start to get all the critics' reviews. You hear about these critics all panning the movie, and you're thinking, oh no, surely not. They've ruined this one as well. And you're kind of thinking, oh, just send it all back to Marvel. Let them deal with their own properties. But then you kind of get this awareness of, well, actually, people seem to be enjoying it as well. So I was genuinely confused by all the reception and what I was going to come into. So as much as I could, I tried to free myself of any of that baggage going into this. And again, I'm not a stickler for, the comic book source material says this, so, thou must do that panel for panel. I don't think you can do that. But, just if you take the essence of the character and what the character's all about, then quite happy with that. Again, like yourself, we've highlighted a few holes in there. Are still, for me, the fact that he's not got his powers from Spider-Man, but he's still got the Venom eyes, which are basically the Spider-Man suit eyes. It's not explained. It's just a bunch of aliens. Not massively hung up on that, but I thought it was just a bit convenient. He seems to have no webs, does he? So he's more like he's more like a Hulk or a Thor type character, isn't he? Just really big and strong. Yeah. Not sticky. So when he goes up buildings, it's through brute force. But yeah, I think enjoyed the movie. Definitely. Again, it's an origin story, a linearly told origin story. So again, I didn't particularly feel like it was slow, but definitely when Eddie starts talking to Venom and they have that back and forth, it steps up a level and just gets better right up until the end fight scene, which is, a big CGI gloop and just is what it is. And then we have closure. So for me, I would definitely echo what you said. Go and watch the movie. Make up your own mind on what you think about it. I think if they'd resolved some of the things that we've talked about, in terms of the villain, the baddie, having a bit more empathy for his plight, and Drake as well, understanding his motivation and how that came together, understanding why Venom is really suddenly going to become Earth's protector as opposed to being part of that invasion force. I think if they fix those things, we could have had an Asgard on our hands. But as it is, it's not. It does have those problems, and so I'm going to send it to Atlantis, which still a pretty good score. And like I say, thoroughly enjoyed the movie, and definitely looking forward to the sequel. But if you do Carnage, gotta be R-rated.
Good call. Good call. Good to be back, mate. I've got to say now, just before we go, have you got any plugs for us, Dave?
Yep, I do. So I'll just mention the Grassroots Coachcast, where myself and my co-host Ben will go through different topics for youth football or youth soccer coaching and all the different challenges that come along with that. Chris, what about yourself?
Yeah, we've got our football podcast, which is the Chat Footy podcast. If you get over to Twitter, give us a follow at Chat Footy, or get over to Twitter and follow Dave, because your tag team partner still hasn't created his Chat Footy alter ego. It's at Chat Footy Dave. And if you want to follow the podcast, it's if you want to follow the podcast and give it a listen, it's on iTunes or any other podcast hosting site. Chat Footy podcast, and basically it's very Manchester United, Liverpool orientated with a bit of banter. These separate episodes where myself or Dave and Ben have come on and talking about our teams. I've gone on a bit of a rant this week about United. So yeah, just get over there. And if you want to come on or ask us questions, just give us a follow or a message on social media. Now, Dave, it looks like it's come to the end of the show. I mean, what are you going to take us out with?
Well, I guess you've been Chris and I've been Dave, and together we are Comics in Motion.
Rolling down the street like a bird in the wind.
What the hell are you?
We are Venom.
Oh, I am a parasite. Yeah. Name is Jen.